Now we are going forward to our panel discussion session, which theme is Islamic work ethics, social responsibility, and commitment of Islamic financial institutions. Dr. Fadillah Mansor will chair and moderate this panel discussion. Dr. Fadillah Mansor is Head of Department at Department of Sharia and Management, University of Malaya, Malaysia. I request Dr. Fadillah Mansor to please introduce the worthy panelists and enlighten us with the valuable discussion of the panel. Before going further, I want to remind to our audience that please ask your questions in QA section. Now, Dr. Fadillah Mansor, please continue.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Dr. Chairman. The esteemed guests, all the worthy panelists today, local and international scholars, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning. Yeah. Okay, first of all, I would like to warm welcome all the panelists in this session. Actually, we have 4 esteemed panels here today. They are Prof. I can see Prof. Humayon Dar. Prof. Humayon Dar from UK he is Director General at Cambridge Institute of Finance, UK. And also we have Dr. Rizwan Malik. Dr. Rizwan Malik is a Senior Manager at AAOIFI, Bahrain. And also we have here Mr. Mohammad Noranuar. Mr. Mohammad Noranuar is a Head from Sharia Structuring from Nizwa, Oman. And also we have one more esteemed panelist who is Professor Hudaib. But I cannot see him here at this moment. Professor Hudaib?
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Fadillah. Can you hear me?
We are still waiting. Yeah, Waalaikumsalam.
Dr. Fadillah, please continue until Dr. Hudaib joins, please.
Okay, so we just continue for our topic for session today. Our topic today is about Islamic work ethics, social responsibility and commitment of the Islamic financial institution, IFI. And as a COVID pandemic, you know, COVID pandemic still continuing to have a huge impact on the face-to-face meeting. So we are thankful because of we still have the solution to resolve this issue by conducting a virtual meeting. And we are so lucky today, even though we are from different part of this world, but we stay together in terms of different time zone, day or night, but we still can meet to each other and discuss the topic today in this session. So thanks to Zoom and also to this virtual conference. I would like to start our conversation today with Dr. Rizwan, our panelist. So Dr. Rizwan, AAOIFI actually has issued the Code of Ethics for Islamic Finance Professional. So could you please enlighten to us about this basic of this code and ethic, and also how we can connect this code and ethic to the our aspect of discussion to the Islamic work ethic. Please welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fadillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's a pleasure to be part of this worthy panel, and you know, I'm delighted to be part of this. Let me start by thanking the organizers, Minhaj University, for organizing this wonderful conference once again this year. And I have been following over the last day, and it has been truly amazing conference so far. So thank you very much for extending the invitation to AAOIFI and to myself again this year. Now, on to your question, Dr. Fadillah. There were 2 codes issued by AAOIFI prior to this. However, those codes were issued about 2 decades ago. And since then, the global Islamic finance industry has taken great strides and has developed globally. And as such, there was a need to update and revise the code in line of those developments, and to ensure that the unethical practices that are otherwise followed in other part of the world, in other part of the world, are not followed within the Islamic finance industry. So AAOIFI was faced with a choice. One is to adopt a conventional code of ethics, although there are a lot of similarities between conventional and Islamic finance when it comes to the topic of ethics. So we had an option of either adopting a code of ethics from a conventional financial industry or develop one of our own. So based on the discussions of the board and some of the unique concepts within Islam, and to give you an example, the belief of akhirah or hereafter, which leads to the concept of higher level of accountability beyond this world, it is difficult to imagine in general how a person can be motivated if he's expected to follow he's expected to act ethically even when not being observed, or when the fear of being caught is not there. And due to these traits, we at AAOIFI decided to set up a code of our own. And the code begins with the concept of an ethical paradigm, that how an Islamic financial professional is expected to be ethical. The answer we got to in brief is that the person can be ethical in all he can be ethical by achieving adl. Adl means here justice, and pursuing ihsan in all work activities at all times. But for him to achieve adl at all times, it is important for him to strive for excellence. So he must continue ihsan in the first step. So this is derived from the famous ayah from the Holy Quran, which we all hear in Friday sermons mostly, and it says that Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan wa ita'i zil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'idukum la'allakum tadhakkarun. Indeed, Allah orders justice and kindness and giving to relatives, forbids immorality, bad conduct, and oppression. He admonishing you that perhaps you will be reminded. Now, this is the first component of the conceptual framework. Next, the code asks the questions: how can an Islamic financial professional is expected to achieve adl in all work activities? Yes, he must pursue ihsan as the first step, but here we need to understand ihsan adl in detail. The code says that there are 4 elements in adl and ihsan equation. So adl and ihsan equation actually wraps up the code of ethics. It says that there are the 4 elements are: the first one is he must have the right intention and the right mindset. In Islam, we all know that an action is considered ethical not because of its outcome, but because of the intention one has and the effort one expends when performing that action. And that, of course, we know the famous hadith in Allah, the deeds are considered by the intention, and a person will get a reward according to his intention. The code encourages Islamic financial professionals to work in the Islamic finance industry with the intention to seek Allah's pleasure and reward. That's the number 1 part of the equation, which is basically he must have the right intention and the right mindset. The second part is this equation is doing the right thing, which is anything that is prescribed by the Islamic law and the law of the land. And again, it is coming from the surah, from the words of the Holy Quran, where it says, "O you who believe, obey Allah and obey the messenger and those in authority among you. Then if you have dispute among yourselves, revert back to Allah and his messenger." That's number 2. The third element of the equation is doing the right thing in the right manner in terms of proficiency, timeliness, and efficiency. Verily, and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Verily, Allah has prescribed ihsan in all things." That's number 3 of the equation. Number 4 says the fourth part of the equation is to engage with others in a positive manner, to encourage them to behave ethically. This may include or involve influencing them with the words and actions, preferably by presenting a role model through your own self-conduct. Now, one may ask the question that how can we balance all these 4 elements in the adl equation, and how can we achieve adl in our work? The code then breaks it down and says that for you to achieve adl in all these 4 elements, you should have in all these, it is prescribed through the ethical virtues. Now, the ethical virtues in all these 4 elements states that for the right intention, we say that the code of ethics of AAOIFI says that if you uphold the ethical virtue of taqwa, which is Allah's consciousness, For the right mindset, we say uphold the ethical virtue of tawakkul, which is a reliance on Allah. Number 2, for the right thing, we say that if you uphold the virtue of sidq, which is integrity, and amana, we will say that you are achieving adl in that part of the equation. For the right manner, we say uphold the ethical virtue of quwwa, which is strength. For engaging with others, we say uphold the ethical virtue of tawasib al-haq, exhorting truth. The next part of the code says that how can we uphold these 6 virtues, taqwa, tawakkul, sidq, amana, quwwa, and tawasib bil-haq. The code lists down all the violations of these virtues in part B of the code. So just to give you an example, in sidq, we say that if you do not lie, exaggerate, palter, etc., it means that you have achieved adl in the ethical virtue of sidq, which in turn means that you have achieved adl in doing the right thing.
Okay, so you mean, Dr. Rizwan, in terms of to ensure that this code of ethic is implementation, and effort to implement it in the practical way is very important, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the code breaks it down and gives you how you can do that. And it provides it in part B that you can achieve. The first part is that it's very important for you to you need to achieve in all work activities, you need to achieve adl. But you can only achieve adl in a very sustainable basis on a long term if you strive to achieve excellence. And if you do not achieve adl, the code says that you are in zulm, which is, of course, you are you're not doing justice to the work that you have on offer. So it's a very important part. So I'm just going to give you an example here. That, for example, in sidq, if you are to give example in sidq, we say that if you do not lie, palter, etc., it means that you have achieved adl in doing the right thing. But doing the right thing means that you've achieved adl in that. But if you have, for example, not achieved adl in the quwwa part of the virtue,
doing the right thing means that
virtue, you are not doing justice to it.
Behind, right, Dr. Rizwan? So maybe we can move to the another. Prof. Huda is here. Is just here. So we can have his response about how actually this Islamic work ethic and also the social responsibility can be implemented. I mean, from a point of view of academician and also in terms of practice.
Alhamdulillah, wali salihin, wa salatu wassalam ala ashraf al-anbiya al-mursalin. Can you see me or just my voice?
It's okay. You just continue.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm using someone's mobile laptop, so I got with a different name and different background. So, first we need to define what is the Islamic work ethics. The definition at the moment, actually, if you read the literature, is not really satisfactory. We don't know there's no much definition. And then if we really want to define it, so that will help us to come up with our understanding the rest of perhaps the concept of Islamic ethics and also the issue of social responsibility. So if I look at it from the Islamic work ethics, actually, it is deeper than what we know in the conventional or the Western concepts. The Islamic work ethics has an ontology, and it has an epistemology and methodology. With regard to the ontology, literature very well define it very well. You can see a lot of debate on that being tawheed and follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as, and then also then you can see that people always focus on the literature or about the micro level of the Islamic work ethics. But actually, the Islamic work ethics is very much a social movement. It is very much a mobilization of the ummah or the society, or stabilizing organization and moving the organization from one position to a better position. So then we are talking about the epistemology involved in Islamic work ethics, which is about the taqwa or piety. If I want to apply the Islamic work ethics, we need to look to what's the hadith or ayat to encourage people for taqwa. So now, if it's now become an issue of the mobilization or the issue of having an Islamic work ethics for an organization, then we can have a different methodology than if we wanted to be or have it for the society itself. And then if no point for a Muslim organization to operate within itself or improving, like Islamic Bank, improving their work ethics, but actually the surrounding environment is not really coordinating or matching the same ethical values. So the corruption issue has to be addressed, and also the concept of Islam. I notice in some Islamic countries, we talk about, for example, the Islam Watani or Islam nationalist. Then actually Islamic work ethics is borderless and borders. And then these issues had to be addressed to start with as what is the Islamic work ethics in general. And then for that, what I'm saying now, since if it's like this as a methodology and ontology issue, it has a micro and meso and macro level. So that's really, I'm just giving a small, points on on the Hayat al-Tayyiba related to Islamic work ethics and as a holistic view or concept rather than what we know from the Western concepts of ethics, where they just give you a list of maybe 3-4 pages on how to be a good person and independent and objectivity, and so very much teleological approach on how to do things or how not to do things for material gain. But Islamic work ethics is beyond what we want. And most literature, unfortunately, most papers I see or I read, they focus or try to zoom Islamic work ethics into this very minor or micro level of the good character. Islamic microethics, as I said, is beyond that. It's more social movement and social pressure.
So you mean, Prof. Hudaib, we need to highlight this Islamic work ethic to be part of our life, daily life, right?
It is actually, if you look to the history of Islamic work ethics and social responsibility, we are a unique ummah or unique setting than the Western. They work on the power. They see the church and then warlords or the king, and they are the one who actually define the work or the public or for the organizations and put things as acceptable as a law and ethics. But the Muslim ummah, we have a current. We will have the consensus. You see, if we look to even the history of Islamic banking, it started from the pressure from the public. And same what we have in Asia, for example, the halal food. Halal food actually came not from the organization or from the macro level, it came from the grassroots of people who demand. So Islamic business ethics and Islamic social responsibility, again, it's a social movement and penetrated slowly into the model Islamic programs, Islamic banking. So actually we are reshaping as I said, it's public rather than organizational.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Hudaib. Okay, we move to Prof. Humayon Dar, being expert in as scholars and practitioner. For example, how do you see the role of Islamic banking, for example, in terms of the social responsibility, and also how to embrace this Islamic work ethic towards this organization? Prof. Humayon Dar.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's already getting very fascinating, the debate over here. Now, we started with a code of ethics already in place, or which has been developed by Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions. And we listened to Professor Hudaib, who came up with some very relevant points to Islam, work ethics and social responsibility, and of course, relevance of Islamic, what he was talking about. Now, this reminds me of Professor Masood Alam Chaudhry, ontology, epistemology, methodology. He has made, all these logi very popular in Islamic literature, and I think he should be attributed for this development in Islamic thought. When it comes to the role of Islamic banking and finance in social responsibility. I must say that the phenomenon has been rather slow. Islamic banks started as capitalistic organizations within a conventional framework where Islamic banks would be like any other companies, any other banking companies, with a very limited focus on social responsibility. And if there has been any focus on social responsibility, this is no more than the focus on social responsibility by their conventional counterparts. If I give example of focus on social responsibility by a bank in Pakistan, where principally this conference is being held, UBL, for example, United Bank Limited, this is one conventional bank. And when we look at its social responsibility commitment, it's huge. Okay. And it's a separate kind of focus. Banking business is this one, and here is this social responsibility on the fringe of that one. Islamic banks actually inherited this attitude towards social responsibility. Now, how can Islamic banking move to the next level? This is something a lot of academicians have been emphasizing upon. Islamic is the focus on social responsibility should be in the main objective and mission of Islamic banking. I have started getting my own echo. I don't know what has happened to technology. So what can be done in this respect? I think the government of Malaysia, Bank Negara Malaysia, came up with a very interesting framework on value-based financial intermediation. So this is something which should be further developed to make sure that Islamic banks are explicitly more socially responsible as compared to their conventional counterparts. And this framework developed for one country, it should be adopted by a multilateral institution like AAOIFI or IFSB, and a new standard could be developed. You know, this code of ethics which AAOIFI has developed, this is for individuals primarily, the workers, employees of Islamic banks and financial institutions. But what could be a code of ethics for a bank or an Islamic financial institution as a whole? Ethical code. I think this is extremely important for us to look into the possibility of developing an institutional code, institutional ethical code for Islamic banks and financial institutions, which first would be a voluntary code, and then through some national regulators, some kind of compulsoriness of this could be developed in one jurisdiction, which can be taken to other parts of the world as well. Islamic bank, whenever we talk about Islamic banking and finance, there is an implicit ethical reference over there anyway. And our brother, Professor Hudaib, he rightly mentioned, a lot of things have come into Islamic banking and finance through a democratic process. People actually asked for this thing. Now, this emphasis on Islamic code of ethics, this in a way has been a demand from the market. A lot of people in a country like Pakistan, for example, they would say that, you know, I go to this Islamic branch of a bank, an Islamic bank or conventional bank, Islamic branch of a bank, and I do not find any difference of environment in this branch from a conventional branch. And from here, a conversation started on the dress code for women, for example. If I go to the branch of a conventional bank, I would find women, okay, in whatever way they want to dress themselves, they would be like this one. So the customers of Islamic banks, they started questioning. And as a result of that, we find that a lot of Islamic banks, now they have a code of a dress code for women. Okay. I'm not advocating anything. I'm just talking about a phenomenon which has taken place in the market. So if Islamic banking needs to be more socially responsible, the demand should come from the customers. Customers should ask them, okay, for example, even in pandemic, Islamic banks have been reporting increase in profits. Then customers of these banks should ask them, okay, you have been reporting an ever increasing profits. How about your reporting on social responsibility? How on your reporting on sustainability? How on your reporting for corporate good governance? These are the things which can be initiated by the customers of Islamic banks, and of course the regulator should play a role as well. We run a program called Global Good Governance Awards, and these days we are looking into the Indonesian market, for example. All the corporations, big corporations, we have gone to their websites, they would have reference to good corporate governance, because this is a requirement over there. So all the big corporations, they must report on their corporate governance. Similarly, we go to energy sector, we go to petroleum sector. All the organizations, they have to report on their sustainability. So you go to Bankchak's website, they would have this huge sustainability report, which is produced on an annual basis, because this is a requirement. Why Islamic banks are not coming up? And I think, okay, now, to sum up the things, individuals and customers, they should put Islamic financial institutions into a corner and ask them why you are not being more and explicitly socially responsible. And people like us, academicians, and those who are involved in Islamic banking and finance, they should be putting pressure on the governments and banking regulators to make sure that Islamic banks, if they call themselves Islamic, they have to be more socially responsible than their conventional counterparts. And of course, we would keep on asking the likes of AAOIFI, IFSP, etc., to come up with more standards on social responsibility, work ethics, and of course, commitment of Islamic financial institutions to these principles. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Humayon Dar, for the good rise in terms of the major point here. Especially, I agree with you when you say about social responsibility among the conventional bank is very limited. That's why we need some regulation to ensure this is implemented, especially in terms of Islamic banking and finance institution. So we move to the Mr. Mohammad Noranuar. It is about how you feel in terms of the Islamic bank and also Islamic financial institution. Is this institution allocate their commitment or give priority in terms of promoting the social responsibility and also the ethics in their implementation, in their operational side? Mr. Mohammad?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Can you hear me clearly? Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. In a very good morning. Thank you, Dr. Fadillah, for moderating the session. In fact, Dr. Fadillah is my lecturer back in 2004-2005 when I was in University of Malaya. So it's a pleasure to meet her, albeit in the internet platform. Fellow panelists, as well as the attendees of the conference, very good morning to all. Well, the question posted to me are two components. The first one is with regards to the Islamic work ethics, IWE, and the second part is the CSR, corporate social responsibility. Now, this is a very broad topic for two elements to be described in 5 minutes. I'll try my level best. Coming from the practitioner, I think we have been, I would like to say, and I would like to use the word misconstrued or misconception by the public at large. First of all, when the Islamic banking was introduced in 1960s, 1970s in some countries, Malaysia started Islamic banking in 1960s. Some countries like Oman, for example, where I based, started Islamic banking rather late in 2012. Now, what comes to the people's mind, right, is that when they think about Islamic bank, they always have this notion that, you know, Islamic banks must be cheaper. So this notion, I think we should perhaps correct the mindset of the public. Islamic bank, just like conventional bank or any other institution, are profit driven. We are commercial institution. However, as what has been rightly pointed out by the first three speakers just now, is that we have our moral and religious duty to the public and to the society, as well as to the economic system, that we can contribute more. So this contribute more, quote unquote, right now is still, I think, work in progress. For example, let me touch first upon the Islamic work ethics. I'm sure all of you are very much aware of the book called Islam, The Straight Path. This book is written by a very famous Orientalist, John Esposito. He said that Islamic work ethics, or work ethics to a certain extent, are applied for both public and private. What is the beauty in his book? He stated that Islam as a system, if we look from 360 angle, it does actually promote this particular work ethics, whether at the individual level or at the institution level. Coming to a bank, Dr. Humayon just now mentioned about the dress code. I would like to share with you a very interesting case study in Oman, especially in my bank, Bank Nizwa, is that we are having dress code, not only for women, but also for men. Interestingly, when this bank was founded in 2012, it is built on the notion that this Bank Nizwa must be based on the enhanced image of Islamic banks in the GCC. What does that mean? It means that whenever the customer comes into this particular bank, they feel different, not in the form of settings only, but how we conduct the business. Now, coming to this end, dress code is one of it. Bank Nizwa, alhamdulillah, we are adopting the code of ethics by AAOIFI. I think it's standard number 2, for example. This standard number 2 code of ethics by AAOIFI has been established since 2003, long time back. And also the bank is adopting the IFSB business conduct, also has been established since 2009. The beauty of this standard is that whenever you approach the staff of the bank in general, in Bank Nizwa and generally in Oman, you're not only being greeted by, for example, salam, the nice sphere of the bank and branches, but the understanding that we are here to help the client in the sense that, hang on, okay, we understand that you have a certain needs, financial needs, right? So an employee of the bank who have this work ethics knows that, you know, for good margin of profit or for a high commission, usually bankers, especially at the branches, they will cross-sell many products, especially credit cards, personal financing and all. In Oman, we have been taught that, first of all, when you communicate with your client, understand their financial background. For example, inculcate the habit of savings, right? The habit of savings among the Muslims are very poor. This is one example. The other example is that whenever the customer approach the bank for a certain type of financing products, we will advise them. This is a very interesting case study. One of the client of us approached the bank and says, hey, hang on, I wanted to apply for personal financing to go and watch football. Okay, I'm a fan of Manchester United. Unfortunately, we draw with Arsenal last night. So anyway, when this client approached the bank, he said, hey, hang on, Bank Nizwa, okay, Dr. Humayon. Hey, Bank Nizwa, can I ask for financing for you to finance the tickets to Manchester and buy a seats, etc., etc. The staff at the bank has been trained that to ask the client, okay, do you really need it? Why do you want to go to Manchester? You can watch over a television, for example. You know, for a bank to operate in such a manner, to me, is very unique. Usually, whenever the customer approaches the bank, wants to go here and there, we just find this, okay, hang on, let's sign the form. This is one example on the Islamic work ethics. I will explain later in the second session. Coming to the corporate social responsibility, this is also a very pertinent question right now that being asked to the banks. Are Islamic banks doing enough with CSR? I think the answer is yes. And again, this is work in progress. Of course, I cannot compare, for example, in 2019, the best bank in the entire world in regards to CSR, as per the Euro money, is BNP Paribas. BNP Paribas is a conventional bank. And the best Islamic banks that have CSR program, like coded and audited with a list of programs, are CIMB Islamic Bank in Malaysia. Now, volume and size, of course, we cannot compare with the conventional. But I think what we need to do now is that to realign the CSR reports. I mentioned again, to tie our financial report, for example, with the Pillar 3, Basel 3. So Pillar 3, Basel 3 usually require the banks to disclose a certain information with regards to risk management. And I think moving forward, perhaps this particular notion also can be enhanced and reported in the annual report of the bank. And Alhamdulillah, I've seen tremendous progress with tremendous list of programs done by Islamic banks. Again, I would like to give you one example, what is happening in Oman, okay? Not related to typical CSR, like for example, visiting orphanage, providing educations. This is what we have done. At the product level, usually the cynical part coming on the product offered by Islamic banks. Before the magic of Tawarruk or commodity murabaha come into the picture, all the Islamic banks are deploying many contracts. And in Oman, alhamdulillah, commodity murabaha is banned, like it's completely banned, prohibited, mamnu. The blessing in disguise is that Islamic banks in Oman are forced to deploy many contracts as per AAOIFI and as per Sharia. Back in 2019, Oman has been hit with a big cyclone. When this happened, of course, our clients are affected. And Bank Nizwa and other Islamic bank as well, we are, for example, for Tamwil Al-Aqarat, we financing home finance, we are using the contract of Musyarakah Mutanaqisah. It means diminishing Musyarakah shared risk. When I mention shared risk, it means a real share of risk. It's not like, you know, you just circumvent the risk by pushing all risk to the client. This is not happening. What happened was that this cyclone happened, and I think if I can recall correctly, more than 20-25 houses in Oman, our clients, like damage is a total loss. So in the conventional sphere, usually when this happened, they don't really care what happened to the underlying asset. The client just continue to service the loan. In our case, alhamdulillah, this is what I see the beauty of the CSR in real terms of products, where Bank Nizwa is taking the hit on the capital of the financing that the bank is giving to the client. And at the same time also, we are among the first in Oman that say to the client, hang on, we understand that your house is damaged, and therefore we waive, it's not deferment, we waive for a certain period of time from collecting installment from you. And I think this type of case study needs to be shared all over the world, that we are here to share the risk with you. Whenever you are at loss, we are also at loss together, because we are sharing the capital together in this particular regard. So with that note, I think more than 5 minutes, I give back the chair to Dr. Fadillah and we'll continue.
That's a very good point in terms of sharing risk. We know that in terms of Islamic banking, even anywhere in the world, that sharing risk is a big something like, you know, element that is very people afraid of sharing risk actually, but at the end of the day, sharing risk actually give more profit even to the customer and also to the bank. That's very good. But maybe I can add some more in terms of balance. Means all the banks need the profit as their part of income. I mean profit distribution for the income, and also to achieve the profit maximization. But actually, when we talk about the Marcos said, actually the profit is something, but the reasonable profit is something which is encouraged. So how actually to balance between this profit and profit maximization, and at the same time to highlight the social responsibility among the bank, that they can do the social responsibility, but at the same time they can actually hit their financial performance as well. So maybe you have your point, Mr. Mohamad, before I move to another panel.
Thank you, Dr. Fadillah. Very good point raised. I think when it comes to profit maximization, it goes back to how, first of all, of course, for a bank to operate, we have many revenues coming in from the deposits, investment, asset and liabilities, and so on and so forth. In GCC particularly, if I can share my humble experience here, and back then in Malaysia, whenever the customer interact with Islamic banks, especially in this market, they are very sensitive to the sum'ah. In Arabic, we call it sum'ah. In English, we call it reputational, reputation of the bank. Reputation of the bank means the psyche of the GCC people, especially the Omanis, are that they wanted to see if, let's say, I am I'm in financial needs, like I'm facing with some sort of issue, COVID-19 and all, where the bank stands in this particular regard. Are they helping me? And here, the word of mouth and of course the power of WhatsApp are very rampant. So in that aspect, if let's say, for example, the banks are not ready to help, for example, ready to help means whenever the client are being hit with a certain financial calamities, or for example with a disaster like I mentioned just now, they first think that is this bank ready to help? And if usually in Oman, this mashallah happening very well. If let's say we are helping the client in this particular regard, usually we can see the return on the product per product, be it at the assets level or at the investment levels, are increasing. Not only by the number of clients, but also by the volume per product. This is very interesting. I can see a direct correlation between the CSR done by the bank as well as the subscription to the products. The more you give, the more you get at the end of the day. Thank you.
The more you, as what the Quran said, right? The more you give and the more you get. And we move to Dr. Rizwan, for example, in terms of IOFI standard, we see that this IOFI standard is making as compulsory standard to be applied in Islamic bank industry, especially for example in Pakistan. So how do you see this standard is practically applied to other jurisdiction or other countries that implement Islamic bank?
Thank you, Dr. Fadillah. I mean, excellent listening to the fellow panelists so far on very important topics. I think Brother Mohammad Sajari covered a lot of these points on CSR, way more than what the AAOIFI standard covers, which was issued back in 2010. And since the developments of in the global world and the disclosure requirement required from the stakeholders, this standards as we speak is undergoing revision. So there's a need to update the standard, but until the standard is updated and issued, of course it's there in practice. And as I said, I mean, this standard was issued in 2010. And the way the standard defines CSR for Islamic financial institutions, that it refers to all activities of Islamic financial institutions to fulfill its religious, economic, legal, ethical, and discretionary responsibilities as a financial intermediary. And this can include a lot of things when it comes to the CSR practices and being a bank, an Islamic bank, which is different from the conventional bank. Some of the examples that Brother Mohammad Sajari mentioned are where you actually become a partner. You take in the risk. We are facing a problem. You are, you act like a partner, and you do not act like you are a financier in that sense. So a lot of things that are coming out from the standard itself. The standard states, of course, there are mandatory part which the standard states that the Islamic financial institution, no matter wherever you are, whichever part of the world, you have to follow. And there are some recommended conduct that the Islamic financial institutions should follow. So in general, the principles of the standard are applicable to all Islamic financial institutions, regardless of their legal form, country of incorporation. However, the specific rules and provisions of the standard for the activities and compliance and disclosure, that they generally depends on the muscles of the Islamic financial institutions according to the standard itself. So the mandatory conduct requires that the Islamic financial institutions should have in place a screening policy as approved by the Sharia Supervisory Board, i.e. the prospective client that the bank is taking on board, are they compliant to Islamic law in that sense? And if they are not, if the bank is not at risk of undergoing a fraud or money laundering or Sharia non-compliant activities, the bank has to have a policy in place to ensure that such malpractices or such potential risk is not there, and they screen against it. Then the bank, the standard recommends that the Islamic financial institutions should have a policy in place for dealing with clients. And dealing with clients here, I would like to relate and not be a financier, but be a partner. Deal with your clients with empathy and consider their individual position. So a policy should be in place to ensure that the clients are not put at there is an avoidance of onerous clients. Clients are screened to ensure that the contract that they are given does not put them into difficulty, something that they can't fulfill. Similarly, when it comes to the marketing ethics, there should be a good balance between between promoting the business as well as promoting unethical behavior in that sense, or inappropriate behavior that takes them to to the positions which they cannot fulfill. Similarly, implementing responsible financial practices, where extending finances in line with the conditions of the institution. So not extending finances where people cannot pay back. And there should be a policy in place where the late payments, so people, like when we are facing COVID-like situations, the banks needs to understand and put in place a policy that they allow late payments, they provide moratorium. So conditions, natural conditions like COVID-19, where banks have been and the regulators have been very thoughtful and understandable of the positions, the bank should have these policies in place. Similarly, if the banks, when it comes to Islamic financial institution or a bank, how do they earn the unprohibited, the prohibited income in that sense? So, for example, the penalty funds, how do they disclose it? There should be a disclosure, there should be a Sharia opinion on it, and it should be disposed of such revenues. And then the mandatory conduct also states that you should have a policy in place which promotes welfare of employees and equal opportunities for all. No matter what race, religion you come from, there should be equal opportunity for everyone. There should be merit-based salary and promotion, and there should be training and development available for all employees. Similarly, there should be a policy in place for zakah. Now, the recommended conduct states that and the recommended here means that if the Islamic financial institutions have the muscle, then they should have these policies in place as well. There should be a policy for Qard Hasan. Islamic financial institutions may implement a CSR policy for Qard Hasan for social reasons. There can be a Qard Hasan fund established. Similarly, there should be a policy in place, something that is becoming more and more important, policy for reduction of adverse impact on the environment. So, of course, environment is becoming more and more important. Our religion actually pushes us and enforces us to take care of the environment. However, here the standard only recommended that you should have the policy to reduce the adverse impact on the environment. They should be.
So you mean Dr. Rizwan, in terms of the standard, everything is already complete, but now it depends on the institution whether they want to apply it or not in the situation. Yeah. Okay, Prof. Hudaib, how actually this institution can get benefit from this implementation?
Well, I would not make any propaganda for WIEFC saying that you have to adopt WIEFC standards, but it can be started by adopting WIEFC standards to start with. However, the issue is not only the WIEFC accounting standards, but also the corporate governance code, as well as the ethical code, which has been almost borrowed from outside, from non-Islamic background. I will say, if you look closely, examine the corporate governance code and the code for professional conduct, they come from almost the classical theory or the stewardship. So basically, the code of ethics as well as the code of corporate governance very much emphasize on the stewardship rather than the social part or the collective responsibility of the management towards other stakeholders. So that's one thing. The second, what I refer to Prof. Humayon Dar when he mentioned about the code of ethics, and that it's rightly we need to revise this And then it has to be like they call it an open platform that it can be revised and organized or change over the time, because we are moving, the industry is fluid and there's a lot of change. So we cannot put it like in 10 pages code and then keep it or leave it forever. So that has to be an open plan. Now, the company, from the economic transitional theory, actually they will benefit from having a work or Islamic business ethics or Islamic work ethics, because the marginal costing can be less, as well as the marketing issue. That's what you can, like what other Mohammad Sajari and others says, that the bank always responsible, listening or reflecting to the customer need. So now I have this is what the customer wants, and then I'm going to reflect that in my kind of work ethics and social responsibility issues. So actually, there is a benefit, economically proven, and also from the marketing issue, it has been proven. What's left is now actually
agree with you, Prof. Hudaib.
Yes. So what?
Agree with you.
One point.
I think might be Prof. Humayon Dar, you would like to say something, or you want to would you like to add something in terms of how do we relate these aspects of work ethic and also in terms of social responsibility, as what you said just now. In Malaysia, we have 2 code of conduct, which is because of this are regulated in the Islamic banking and finance, so the institution have to apply it in terms of the operational side. So how do you see this kind of thing, this kind of aspect to promote the social financings among these institutions?
What I'm going to propose, like what actually yesterday Prof. Sutei mentioned, he said there's a civil society, but I would say we don't need that civil society pressure. We could have an esteemed, we call it esteemed committee, that highly independent of any organizations or from bank, but they are representing society, coming from the mosques, from other work of life. And those people will be focusing on one industry or one organization, given that there's a full disclosure, and then there is good kind of willing to reflect on their agenda or their proposal.
Full disclosure is part of the governance.
But the vote will be more like a judgment.
Full disclosure is part of the governance to be implemented. Thank you, Prof. Hudaib. How about Prof. Humayon Dar? Your response about the question?
Right. I must say that, this conversation has evolved in a very interesting manner. And our brother Mohammad Noranuar, okay, I really appreciate your input. A lot of times when we are discussing Islamic banking and finance in academic conferences, we do not refer to the practice. So it's a beauty of this conference that we have brought practitioners and academicians together. I think one way after this conversation, I had some other script in my mind, but I'm going to sum up, given that it's a very short period of time left. I think we can go to the next level of implementation of ethics, social responsibility, and of course we can get more commitment of Islamic financial institutions to this by way of increasing reporting on these aspects. Islamic banks and financial institutions, they are doing a lot of good things when it comes to social responsibility. I would like to name a few institutions here. Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad, for example. There are some amazing stories which they have to tell, okay? And the new CEO, Mohammad, he's doing a wonderful job on social media by bringing out these examples of good practice to people. In Oman, Bank Nizwa is an excellent example. I'm not trying to please Mohammad Noranuar here. I have been following Bank Nizwa, and I must say that from the top leadership to the other employees of the bank, they are developing the bank into a regime which could be an excellent example of social responsibility. In case of Pakistan, Mizan Bank is doing some wonders. And they, in a local context, they share those examples with people. And this is one of the reasons that Mizan Bank is one of the most successful banks, not only Islamic bank, successful banks in the country. While on this panel, I have actually been thinking to come up with a new report. You know, I am known for coming up with reports. So this new report, and Rizwan is smiling about this one. It would be called Islamic Social Responsibility Report, in which we would present examples of good examples to the world of social responsibility and commitment to communities by Islamic banks and other financial institutions. On a lighter note, I'm looking at this chat thing, and someone wrote that thank you for participating in WIEFC 2021. Can you please give me which one is that WIEFC? Okay, and I would like to have a WIEFC 2021 as well. Now, I must say that they are in the context of pandemic. There has been this huge emphasis on Qard Hasan, Waqf, Islamic microfinance, and Zakat. These are the tools which Islamic banks can explicitly use to emphasize on their social responsibility. And these tools can be used in such a way that they become good commercial Islamic banking products as well. Okay. And this is something on which our brothers like Mohammad, Noranuar, he can work on, and we would be very happy to help him in this respect. Thank you.
We're running out of time, Prof. We still can accept one question if they have from the floor.
Sorry, Dr. Fadillah, we have just 2 minutes left.
Yeah, we just have 2 minutes left. Otherwise, we have to skip about Q&A, and then I would like to conclude this session.
Sure.
Okay, I believe a lot of things actually concerning this topic is already covered, especially in terms of the how the theoretical part and how it's going to be implemented. I hope that we all have kind of to learn, acquired, and also in the process of learning to each other, try to give and take in terms of the knowledge and also learning experience to each other. Not only the panel but also the audience, and then at the same time, I must say that my most helpful thanks to all the respected panel and also to our beloved audience for actually investing your time, especially because this is Sunday, so we have great together. Sitting here and then sit for the discussion. And I also take this opportunity to thank the conference committee for having me and also for having all the panels. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, the best. Thank you to all of you. Have the best day ahead. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I send back to the Dr. Bilal. Thank you.